January is to Daytona as the month of May is to Indianapolis. While most of the United States is frozen in single-digit temperatures, Florida remains warm enough to fire up a racing season. And some drivers at GRIDLIFE simply cannot wait for GRIDLIFE Touring Cup at COTA in March. This is the GRIDLIFE iRacers GT3 Battle, a 3-round tour of some of America's premier road racing facilities. To win at Daytona is the ultimate triumph, especially for grassroots racers like Tom O'Gorman. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to GRIDLIFE Live. My name's Kyle Heyer, joined by Tom O'Gorman this evening for the first of a new series. The GRIDLIFE iRacers GT3 Battle will head to Daytona this week, Road America next, and we'll finish things off in the beautiful state of Virginia at Virginia International Raceway. Tonight, though, a stray from our normal strategy, our normal run of show, a 60-minute endurance race tonight, Tom, GT3 cars.
Yeah, this is the first time, I think, in GRIDLIFE history on GRIDLIFE iRacers that we're running a quote-unquote enduro, 60-minute straight single drivers, and we're racing GT3 cars, which is also among the first times that we're going to see multi-make racing in the same race. So once we cut down to the track, you're going to see a whole lot of cars, a lot of different shapes of cars out there as well, and that's going to make this thing a heck of a lot of fun.
Big thank you to FCP Euro. Every part you buy is guaranteed for life. FCP Euro, big supporter here of the GRIDLIFE gaming community. As we get rolling into our qualifying session, we have 11 minutes of racing, but we're here at Daytona International Speedway. Tom, it is a racetrack that you have won at, and it is a beautiful racetrack. It's one of the best road racing facilities in the country. We're going to race off into the nighttime here, but it's all going to start with a run down to turn number 1, a kinked braking zone, then a left-right combination into turn 2, then the International Horseshoe, turn number 3.
Then a quick run through the kink at turn 4. These GT3 cars are fast enough that it's barely flat, but a little hairy. And then quick on the brakes for turn 5, a really challenging decreasing radius braking zone. Then the quick run up to turn 6, critical to get onto the banking for a good run here in any car. Then the big drafting zone comes in. NASCAR's 1 and 2, road courses turns 8 and 9. Then the bus stop, another critical section to get a good run back to start finish. I guarantee you we're going to see our winner determined between that bus stop and that start-finish line.
Then the run, as you mentioned, to that start-finish line. Here's a look at it from up above here in iRacing. Welcome and thanks for joining us here tonight. 60 minutes of racing. It's about to come up here with 60 drivers, Tom. We had 85 drivers attempt to run tonight. Could only run 60 because of iRacing's limitations. And trust me, there are many. But tonight, we're going to start 60 drivers. We have to qualify them, and that's what they're doing now.
Sure, and this is, again, a number of firsts tonight. This is the first time I think we're running an open qualifying session. So all the drivers are actually attempting to qualify within this 20-minute period of time on the track together. And that's a unique challenge because obviously when you're racing in real life, you don't get the track to yourself unless you're, in a high-level NASCAR series. You can see how busy it is. Getting a lap time here that is representative of your actual pace is also going to come down to kind of what time attack drivers deal with. They have to know their spacing. They have to know the kind of place that they need their space for and have to deliver it in probably not 20 minutes worth of lapping. They probably get 1 or 2 shots at it.
Well, there's a lot of trouble spots on this racetrack. You're looking at one of them. This is the bus stop chicane on the back straightaway to slow the cars down. It's a quick left-right, right-left combination. We're going to see a lot of drivers spear off to the inside there. That's a trouble spot for sure. We mentioned turn 1 also, Tom. This is a very challenging braking zone to get right.
Yeah, and you brake a lot earlier than you think, but there's also a number of different ways to come into this corner. You can start shallow on the banking and kind of cut the distance on the way in, but you can also start way up against the NASCAR wall and get a completely different angle on this corner. So it's a great passing opportunity, one of the best here at Daytona, but I really think the story of tonight also is going to be drafting because we're dealing with high downforce cars that have a lot of power, a lot of straight line speed, but we're going flat out around a banking a lot longer than these cars are really designed for, and it's going to be just like the 24-hour race, but here in iRacing.
Yeah, 1/24 of the time we'll be running here this afternoon. One minor difference that we get to do here in the simulator is speed up time just a little bit, so we'll be running at a 2x time multiplier, which will accelerate the sunset here as well. Tom, I think it's about time we roll through the vehicles that we've got here. Drivers were able to choose from 6 of some high horsepower, high downforce GT racing machines. Tom, take me through them. What do we got for this evening?
And of course, these match the real-world GT3 cars. First off, the Audi R8 LMS, mid-engine rear-wheel drive, the German V10 supercar. It's pretty strong. It's pretty strong in all categories. As you see, we have our stats there in the upper left corner. But a little difficult to drive. The mid-engine car, you can lose it on entry pretty easily if you're not careful on those brakes. Then we have the BMW M4 GT3, the newest GT3 car both in real world and sim racing. A little bit unproven on overall pace, but you can see it's pretty easy to drive, great stability, good on the brakes, but otherwise a little bit unproven. Then we're moving back towards those mid-engine cars, the Ferrari 488 GT3, The biggest interesting point of this car is take a look at the upper left. Low acceleration, but super high top speed. This car is going to be a big threat, especially in the draft, even if it's not the fastest car on outright pace. Then, moving on to our fourth option, the Lamborghini Huracan GT3 Evo, another new addition to iRacing here this year. One of the fastest accelerating cars due to a slightly different gear set than the Audi R8, but otherwise pretty similar to the Audi. Also a little bit sketchy on those high-speed entries, but otherwise a strong car. Then the oldest car available to us, but doesn't mean it's slow, the McLaren MP4-12C GT3, the British V8. And it's tough to drive, it's tough to hold on to, and it's really, really fast. So you're going to see those cars probably towards the front tonight, specifically here at Daytona. The top speed may not be the highest of the group, but it can get there with or without the draft. And then finally, another front-engine, rear-wheel drive car, the Mercedes-AMG GT3. Used to be kind of the go-to, but has gotten a couple of updates recently, a little bit more challenging to drive, but otherwise a good steady option, especially for those drivers who prefer that front-engine rear-wheel drive layout. So there's a good look at the overall stats for all those cars, with the caveat that we're talking very, very small details between them. So we've kind of put it on paper for you to see the differences, but realistically these cars are able to turn the same lap times around here very, very close to that at least.
So with the fans filling the grandstands here for our virtual race, again, 6 minutes left here in qualifying. Let's roll through some of the drivers we have here this evening. One of them is Christopher Roberts. We saw him in the FCP Euro Tour pop in for a little while, Tom. He has made a return to GRIDLIFE iRacers action. See him get a little bit wobbly in that Audi R8 LMS. We talked about it. A little bit tricky to get the speed out of it, but if you can extract the speed, it's a pretty solid car.
Yeah, good to see him get it stopped before interrupting anybody else's qualifying, but it is really tough. You know, Daytona's, it's a pretty simple racetrack, really. So extracting speed at 9/10 is not hard, but getting those final little bits of speed here at Daytona is super challenging. And when you add a McLaren into the mix, Austin Cobb's been leading the charge on those McLarens, and it just becomes a really tough balance of how loose do you want your car to be, how little downforce do you want to be, and how hard do you want to make this thing on yourself.
Well, you can also see it shoots flames too, and we all know that cars that shoot flames are better than cars that don't shoot flames, and I will fight anyone that tries to disagree with me on that. So Austin Cobb right now second in qualifying, one of the staples here in the GRIDLIFE iRacers community, also one of the guys that organizes these events, DJ Alessandrini out of Ohio, running the M4. This is actually a car that hasn't even raced in real life yet, Tom. iRacing's actually ahead of the curve here. It drives a little funky because of that. It doesn't have a lot of real-world data behind it just yet, but it is quick, and we know that DJ is capable of extracting that speed as well.
It's quick and relatively forgiving, too, so I think, again, like you said, it's a little bit unproven, but it is a front-engine rear-wheel drive car. The stability is really the key for this car. All BMWs have a little bit of, they have a quirky driving style. You drive them all the same, but you drive them different than any other car, and this car has that too. So DJ says he feels tethered to it, he feels at one with it. I have not had that experience when I drive it, so it's a little bit polarizing. But the car that is not polarizing, everybody loves it, is that one right there on your screen, the Lamborghini Huracan. There's something about it, I know you have fall victim to this too.
Yes.
You just love this car.
It sounds amazing, and to me, that's what draws me to it. Here's James French, which we know that name from Real World Pro Racing, Tom, so he's got some experience and has joined us here in the GRIDLIFE iRacers community. I don't see any Kenton Cook here tonight, but we do have some more pro drivers in the field, even though you're up here joining me in the booth. Again, you've won here in a TCR car, so you know what it takes to be fast around this racetrack. A couple other drivers we should mention. Ken House-Seal is here in the Ferrari 488. Now, a lot of top end here, Tom. Doesn't get up to speed very well. Even with the turbo, it just is a little bit gutless getting up to speed, but once it's at speed, it's a pretty slippery machine.
Yeah, that's why I think it's really going to come down to a long race run is going to do really well for this Ferrari. It's going to draft pretty well, but it also seems to be pretty good on tires, pretty good on balance. I think it's the most forgiving of the mid-engine cars that we have available to us here. As you see Ken induce a big wreck. I don't think that was necessarily by accident right here at the end of qualifying, but that Ferrari don't count it out. And we've got a couple other drivers in it too, including I think Dan Nyman might have stuck with that car as well if he's here somewhere along the way.
Dan Nyman is, yes, in the Ferrari, so he's going to jump ship to that car. I know he was practicing in the BMW the other day and seemed to like that car, but has jumped ship to the Ferrari instead. So right now he's currently 12th in the lineup. You see the timing and scoring on the left-hand side of the screen. Paul Darling has joined us here tonight in the number 43 car. Good to see him. He's in one of those Lamborghinis, of which there will be many. And you mentioned that a lot of people have fallen victim to it for one reason or another. It just does almost everything very well. There's not really anything that it's not good at in some way. So I think we're going to see probably the most Lamborghinis. I don't think they're the fastest on all-out pace, though. Nicholas Johnson in the 36 joins us here, also in a Lamborghini. Jeremy Swenson is in one of those McLarens. Let's talk about this car here for a little bit. This is the oldest GT3 car that iRacing has in its service, and we mentioned it shoots flames. What is tricky to me about this car is how it brakes. Every time you stomp on the brake pedal here, the ABS lights up under your foot. All of a sudden, the car points straight. It really doesn't like to turn and brake at the same time. Where the Lamborghini, you can just stomp on the pedal and make it go wherever you want it to go, and it'll do it. The McLaren is not like that. As soon as you press that brake pedal, you better be going straight, because it'll whip the wheel out of your hands trying to get you slowed down.
It also has a much faster steering rack than the other cars, so if you're used to other cars and you jump in it, it feels really, really twitchy, but once you get used to it, it's pretty normal feeling, is the feedback that a lot of drivers say. So you kind of have to dial yourself into this car specifically, because if you're not used to it, it feels like a death machine, but it really isn't. You see a bit of flames looking back at, I think, DJ Allison Greeny, looking for a little bit of a tow with 1.5 minutes left to go in qualifying. And I love that we've shifted over to this open qualifying format for this season. We've thrown a lot of variables at these drivers. Not only are there 6 cars to choose from, but you have 20 minutes to set your fastest lap in qualifying. Typically, these drivers would get the track completely to themselves, and they would have 2 single laps to try to put down their fastest best lap. And that's, you know, a very time attack style, but more of our GLTC top 10 shootout style, where you get the track to yourself and you have to do it now. This 20-minute session is much more real world for a racing weekend, and I love that we're trying that.
Absolutely, and this format is different than what we'll be running for the rest of the season. At Road America and VIR, we'll be back to our typical sort of shootout heat racing style format, which will have 40 competitors in those races at the National Park of Speed starting next week. But today, 60 drivers, as many as we could cram here at the Daytona International Speedway. Jackie Ding has joined us here as well in the 86. Haven't seen him actually jump on the racetrack yet, so haven't seen him. Also noticed that the sun is going down. I mentioned the conditions. We're going to be driving into the nighttime here. The grip level probably going to rise. With this many cars on the racetrack, one thing that can't be understated is how much the grip level is going to change just on the racetrack itself. The rubbered-in groove is going to be very significant by the end, and if you get outside of that groove and into the marbles, you could have yourself a pretty bad time.
Yeah, precision is definitely going to be key, and we'll watch that actually rubber up as we look down through the kink into the second horseshoe on the infield. The track's starting to clear out just a little bit as we're closing in on the final minutes. There's a good-looking car. That's Anthony Montello, who's been going on a big throwback paint scheme kick, and he's gone for a Wed Sport throwback to the JGTC 300 Celica. If you've had, you know, Gran Turismos and Forzas, you would recognize that car, but he's absolutely knocked it out of the park in another one of those McLarens. Working his way towards the start-finish line will he get one more lap? Maybe. No, ticks over just before. And
so looks like he will pull down to pit lane. He'll get a couple more minutes to finish off the laps that are already in order. A lot of new names I'm seeing here, names that I don't recognize from past series here in GRIDLIFE iRacers. Chris Finnegan seems like a new name to me. Looks like Ryan Dunham is a name I don't believe I've seen before. He's here in that number 14 car, which I believe is one of the Mercedes AMGs. I don't think we're going to see a lot of these cars today, and the reason why is because this car got an update a little while ago that makes it downshift a little funky. It's almost like it's not rev matching quite right. So every time you're entering a kinked braking zone and you hit that downshift, the car will actually try to loop on you, and I don't think it's going to be a big deal at VIR or Road America, but here with the amount of braking zones you have in a corner, I think this is not a desirable car to have, even though it's a very stable platform at speed.
Yeah, it certainly enjoyed its time as the king of GT3 here in iRacing, because we used to have maybe 3 or 4 cars, and it was the easiest to drive. It was the only front-engine rear-wheel drive car for a long time, and it was the one that kind of everybody just flocked to. So I think it's actually kind of cool to have GT3 get shaken up a little bit. We've got a whole bunch of new blood, and I'm definitely going to be keeping an eye on the McLarens. They died off a little bit, and now they're back with a lot of speed, even though they're a little bit older. And I really am curious how that BMW is going to race. There's 2 points that we should talk about probably that we haven't hit on yet. One of them's pit stops, and the other is incentives to stay in your same car.
Yeah, so there's actually some prizing available for each of, or actually basically the top 3 winners of each car. So you will only earn points in the series if you use the same car for all 3 rounds of the championship. And for each car, there are 6 of them. For each car, the top 3 will be earning GRIDLIFE merchandise credits to use on the shop.grid.life page. So there is incentive here to pick a car and pick a car that is not very popular to increase your chances of being successful in it. So that's really cool, and thanks to GRIDLIFE for helping us make that a reality. And you mentioned pit stops, Tom. There's a little bit of strategy involved with that. 75% fuel limit, which means that you can't just pit whenever you want. There's a little bit of strategy you got to play and when you want to make that pit stop, and will you take tires?
Well, yeah, so we basically said we're not only going to do a 60-minute race, but we're going to make you have to pit. So normally these cars would be able to do a 60-minute stint without having to take a pit stop, but that's not as much fun as having to add that strategy call in. So everybody is limited to 75% maximum fuel, which guarantees that you will have to pit at some point within the halfway point of this race. It's probably a 15-minute window along the middle of this race towards the end of the race that you can choose to take that pit stop and still make it to the end. But no, you really don't want to take tires. These cars are designed to go at least an hour at Daytona on their tires by design. So I don't think we'll see anybody, getting the air guns out or anything for tonight, but we will see every single driver make a trip up and down pit lane one time tonight, which is another challenge that we haven't seen much in GRIDLIFE iRacers short of our quote-unquote Joker lap a little while back.
Well, let's roll through our starting grid here, Tom. And on the front row tonight, it's going to be Christopher Roberts in the number 38 car. He was in one of those Audi R8 LMS cars. Austin Cobb will roll off on the outside of that front row.
Then the first of our BMWs, DJ Alessandrini on the inside of row number 2 alongside Jeremy Swenson in the McLaren.
Oh, sorry, I was going to say Nicholas Johnson rolls off in row number 3. Dan Nyman in the 57 rolls off to his outside.
Then we got Alex Barroso in the 7th spot. Alex LaRose alongside in the 8th spot.
In 9th place, it'll be James French in the number 58. Nate Olson in the 117 rolls off alongside him.
Then Paul Darling just outside the top 10 in 11th. Stephen Couliari in 12th.
In 13th place, James Houghton in the number 18, and Tom Abramitis in the number 52 starts alongside James to his outside.
Actually, that's Alex Albert and James Houghton together. Tom Abramitis in the BMW will be 15th, and then Lucas Webster in the 16th spot.
Alex Bueller in the 47, Ido Waxman in the 15. They'll line up alongside each other in 17th and 18th.
And Seals got his work cut out for him, 19th in qualifying, then Rob Pendergast in 20th.
In 21st, Ian Giebler and Rob Clark will start 22nd to his outside.
Then Matthew Morehart in 23rd, and then Dustin Barty on the outside of row number 12.
Eric Dallariva in the number 74 rolls off in 25th, and Marc-Antoine Blaise in the 44 car starts 26th.
A couple of Canadians, then Luca Tucciarone in 27th, and Kevin Sandiego, we found him, he's in 28th.
Ryan Carwile starts 29th, and Chris Uglietta in 30th. He rolls off in the 39 car.
Boy, we're only halfway. Kevin Lee is 31st, and Justin Sang is 32nd.
In 33rd place, it'll be Justin Hall in the number 164. Drew Cleaver, not in the Tesla tonight. He'll roll off in the 917 and 34.
And it's Jimmy Kenevin in 35th, alongside Brian DeVries in 36th.
In 37th, Ray Hilbert, and in 38th, it'll be Kevin Zhu in the number 8 car.
Then in 39th, David Marcus from Autocrossing National Championship fame, and Murphy Nichols on the outside in row number 20.
Joe Ferguson in row number 21 alongside Anthony Montello in that Lazy Rocket car, 46 car, 42nd place.
Then Chris Levitz joins us for the first time tonight in 43rd. Duncan James in 44th in the 75 car.
45th, Alfred Rodriguez alongside Nick Nelson. Then Jeff Underwood, Andrew Smith in 48th.
Chris Finnegan, David Schwartz, Joseph Dale, Kerry Coughlin will start 52nd. Jeffrey Tattersall, Alex Arte, Ryan Dunham, Benson Ty, Tim Wire, Jake Gertzen, and Jackie Ding with no qualifying time round out the field of 59 cars coming to the green flag.
There's a whole lot of them. You mentioned 59. It's going to feel like 150 for everybody in the back. A lot of upward mobility, I'm sure, but 60 minutes of racing on the board about to begin for our first round of the GRIDLIFE iRacers GT3 Battle. Thanks again to FCP Hero for coming on board with us. Time to go racing from Daytona. Next week, it'll be the National Park of Speed at Road America in Elkhart Lake, Wisconsin, here on GRIDLIFE Live. Thanks for joining us on Twitch, Facebook, and YouTube. 60 minutes of racing. And on the front row, it's Christopher Roberts in that Audi. Green flag flies, and we're racing at Daytona.
Austin Cobb's tucking in immediately. A couple of teammates there at the front. Alessandrini is also single file with the rest of the field, streaming down into turn 1 for the very first time. It's almost the top 10 single file already. That's a great start.
Really impressive start so far. No one is, I don't think we've even had any contact of any kind here through turn number 1. Very, very impressed by how everything went through the first couple of corners. I think we've actually gotten away with it for the most part. A couple cars slipping and sliding around, but no major incidents so far. As we go back up towards the front here, Tom, Christopher Roberts leads the way through the International Horseshoe, through the kink, and now down to the West Horseshoe. Austin Cobb hot on his heels in the McLaren.
Bit of a 3-car breakaway, but this is a long, long race, and there's going to be a lot of choices to be made over this one. Right now, Christopher Roberts is setting the pace with a teammate behind him in Austin Cobb. I'm getting nervous not because of the racing, but because if they do this the whole lap one clean, I get a pie in the face.
Oh boy, and so far so good. I don't think we've turned anybody around just yet. So Alessandrini in third, then Swenson, Nicholas Johnson, Nyman, Barroso. And Dan Nyman's got a pretty good run here on the car in front of him. Nyman's in the Ferrari and Nicholas Johnson in that Lamborghini. A couple Italian racehorses, well, a racehorse and a bull going at it here at the exit of NASCAR too.
Well, remember that Ferrari is not necessarily the fastest accelerating, but it has the best top end. So if you get a good run through the bus stop here, see on the brakes pretty early, making sure that he's got an out if he needs it, up under the bumper of that bull, and then through the bus stop, and watch that Ferrari stretch its legs once we get towards that start-finish line.
I don't see anybody looping it around here either. This is a tricky spot to get right even when you're by yourself. So again, very impressed that we were able to get everybody through there without any major dramas. At the front of the field, lap 1 is going to be complete. Christopher Roberts in the 38 car is going to cross the line and lead the first lap of the evening. Then Cobb, Alessandrini, Swenson, Nicholas Johnson, Nyman, Barroso, LaRose, Olsen, and Darling, the rest of your top 10. 2 minutes down, a whole lot left to go.
It's interesting to see DJ Alessandrini. Looks like he backed off of the bumper of Austin Cobb after drafting up to the rear end of that McLaren. The McLaren, it's a very fast accelerating car, but it's a little bit gear limited on that top end, so it'll pretty much hit the same top speed whether it's in the draft or not. Alessandrini in the BMW drafted up to the back bumper and then lifted as he crossed the start-finish line to just save some fuel down into turn 1. Fuel is definitely going to be a factor here tonight because the more you save, the less time you sit still in pit lane.
Nicholas Johnson in the Lamborghini Huracan GT3 Evo on the back tailpipes of that number 1 of Jeremy Swenson. This is a battle for 4th right now as we head into turn number 6. This is the slowest corner on the racetrack here, Tom, down to probably 2nd, maybe 3rd gear. You can roll some pretty good speed. There are a lot of runoff on exit, then throttle up onto the banking. Some drivers will try to cut that tight. Some will let the speed carry out to the wall. Either way seems to work just about the same, and they always feel pretty bad the way you take that corner.
Yeah, look at the McLaren just pull away on the shorter distance, but now once we get into the draft, Jeremy Swenson's going to come back to Nicholas Johnson quite a bit. The field has started to string out just a bit, and again, like you said, a long way to go, 57 minutes.
Looking deeper through the field, James Houghton in the number 18. He is in that blue and white Lamborghini Huracan GT3. Tom Ambritis in the BMW M4. We mentioned this car hasn't even run in the real world yet. We get to see how it'll stack up in the sim before we even hit the 24 hours of Daytona later this month. Look at the speed that he's got coming here, though, Tom. He's going to have a big run.
A big run, and the question is how much do you fight and how much do you save fuel? If you're sitting down here in 15th, you probably want to get forward a bit. So Abramitis to the outside, across start finish side by side with James Houghton, who's put the work in for this week, but qualified just outside the top 10.
Houghton seemed like he was taking his GLTC TSX to every racetrack in Canada last year. I wonder how it would do here at Daytona. But through turn 1, some cars sideways in front of him. That's James French out wide. And through, I think that was Alex Albert. Yes, it was the 35 car. That's the yellow and blue one. And behind them, Stephen Gugliari and James Houghton side by side. Abramitis up the middle as Ido Waxman in the yellow Lamborghini. He wanted to go 3 wide into the International Horseshoe.
Yeah, that was really gentlemanly driving through that little chicane between turns 1 and 2, especially between Houghton and Gugliari. James French has found his way through a couple of cars here. And,
whoa, Waxman had a look up the inside of Bueller in the 47 BMW. Couldn't quite make that stick. Not enough space to go for that move just yet. It looks like Bueller is going to take the short way around. That car looks like it's missing textures. It's got like an empty Minecraft livery slot on that number 47.
Kind of doing his best Kenton Cook impression, but even more obnoxious somehow on that McLaren. But takes a position from Ido Waxman, and then we've got one of our front-running Mercedes just behind that.
Yeah, Alex LaRose here in 8th in the number 16 car. He's got Nate Olsen in the 117 behind him in 9th. You see that rear wing hanging pretty low on the Lamborghini. And that car is shaped like a doorstop. It just looks like a block of cheese out there. But behind him, the BMW, I don't think we can say, at least I mean, that's not, you know.
If you don't have anything nice to say. The face of Mother could love. You know, I'm starting to appreciate, especially with the livery on that car, when you kind of black out the extra grills.
It does look good.
It's really not bad. And I think it'll grow on us similar to the Civic Type R when that first came out. But screaming across the finish line to complete lap number 4, starting lap number 5. And we should mention that fuel stint is going to be somewhere around 25 to 40 minutes into this race. It's a pretty wide window, which means you got a lot of flexibility on race strategy. And I do have to wonder, you know, if you're in this big train of cars and you're maybe stuck, not able to show the pace, do you pit earlier than the drivers around you? Try to get that stop done. Yeah, you might have, Houghton spinning.
Right across the racetrack. James Houghton going to get hit in the door, and he'll find his way off the course to the inside at the exit of the International Horseshoe, Tom. Not the way that I'm sure he wanted that to go. Let's have a look, see how he found himself here. Got a punt from the 52 car, Tom Abramaitis, and back across the racetrack into Ito Waxman.
Yeah, that was a big punt. Unfortunately, Ito had nowhere to go with that one. I'm not really sure how that happened on the way in. It was a couple of cars actually getting together ahead of that. Stevie Couliari and James French were getting together, and Houghton checked up. Abramaitis probably couldn't see. The BMW actually has got a very small front window. Fortunate all around.
Absolutely. At the front of the field, though, Christopher Roberts and Austin Cobb continue to go at it. Here's a look down into the bus stop chicane. Cobb catching that Audi, and Austin really seemed like he liked this McLaren. He felt like he was in it, and he tried a couple other cars. The Mercedes was the one he kind of wanted it to work, but it just didn't, so he jumped back into the McLaren, and he's been fascinated all week long.
Yeah, he's actually been really in love with this car since before its updates, back when it was really a murder machine, and almost nobody drove it, but Austin loved driving it just for the point of pride. Like, I like that car and I drive it. And now it's actually gotten to the point where they've updated it. It drives really well, and he's in a great spot because he's following his teammate. Look at him saving fuel, just lifting off the throttle. It's the start-finish line, rolling into turn one. He's pretty much in control of this race from second place as far as I'm concerned.
There's battle for position. Paul Darling, Nate Olson. Olson in the BMW on the outside, Darling in the Lamborghini on the inside. Here's Pendergast on the outside of the Mercedes. Luca Tucciarone in the Audi on the inside, and up the road. You were mentioning Alex Buehler. And I believe that's Tom Abramaitis in the BMW getting real scrappy back here for position.
Yeah, these guys are going at it hard. It's like they forgot they've got 50 minutes left to go, but that was Alex Buehler absolutely underneath the rear wing of the big BMW just in front, but didn't touch him. That's a perfect space to leave.
Tucciarone in the 48 car. That's the Audi R8 LMS, which is actually under the skin is very similar, if not identical to, as we see Pendergast go off the track in the West Horseshoe, identical to the Lamborghini Huracan GT3 Evo. So they are very similar cars, share the same chassis, the same motor. There are some slight differences, especially in the sound, which is why I like the Lamborghini better, Tom, but for better or for worse, the same car.
Yeah, just pretty much body shape aerodynamically, and then a little bit of difference in gearing is what makes the Lamborghini slightly faster on acceleration. The Audi is slightly better in other areas. I think the Audi tends to be the faster, more preferred car, but that's also because it's been around for a lot longer. You know, the Lamborghini was just introduced to iRacing here about 3 or 4 weeks ago, so it's still a relative unknown, but incredibly popular as you see many of those cars streaming through the bus stop. Ooh, Audi missing it just a little bit. Holds on to it.
Oh, that was getting, again, dicey on exit. We go back to see that battle. Looks like Tucciarone will fall back in behind. That is actually a BMW that's jumped back in front. That's Buehler in the 47 car. Tucciarone, the battle I was watching was the 25 of Lucas Webster. Where did he come from? Haven't really talked about him. Well, he came from exactly where he is, 16th to 16th, and still battling back here with Tucciarone in the Audi R8.
Side by side down into turn one. Krispy Kreme livery there. Oh, gets dodged by a McLaren, and the McLaren's going to run wide. That's Giebler hanging on to it with the rainbow McLaren. Keeps it on the track, and that's the nice thing about turn one here at Daytona is it's really tough, but it's relatively forgiving. Although Ryan Carwile just gets caught out in his BMW M4, rejoins safely on the outside to make sure that he's got some space.
Trouble up the road for Matthew Morehart. Let's go back and have a look at what happened to him here. He might have gotten hit by Ian Giebler in the McLaren MP412C on exit here. Watch Giebler as they go through this S side by side here. Oh, he actually gets the dirt. Wasn't any contact with the McLaren, just got off the course there, Tom.
Yeah, I wonder if he didn't know that was dirt, maybe thought it was paved. It hadn't been out there, and looks like he kind of intentionally dove for it and then got the consequences for it. The Ferrari, unfortunately, in the wall. But now we're looking at, I think this is 4th, 5th, and 6th as Dan Nyman is in hot pursuit from Jeremy Swenson and Alex Barroso.
Nyman has Swenson behind him in that McLaren, and Barroso is closing very quickly. I believe Barroso is in one of those BMWs. No, it's an Audi R8 behind him in that orange and black machine. Big wiggle by the Lamborghini. Was that LaRose? Yes, it was. He's going to go for a loop at the exit of the bus stop.
So easy to do, and one of the tricky things, we haven't talked much about setup, but this is an open setup race, and these cars are very adjustable. There's a lot of parameters that you can mess with, including aerodynamics, and these cars are actually mostly European spec'd FIA race cars that have alternate gearboxes put in them for Daytona specifically. Oh, check this out, the Austin Cobb early pit stop.
Yeah, he's going to hit pit lane about 11 minutes in. I wonder, could this have been a qualifying fuel mistake, and did he not fuel the car sufficiently? This seems early, but maybe he hit his number.
It does seem really early, and if it's not a mistake, he's going to have to continue to fuel save the rest of the race, and I agree that it might have been a mistake because he was in a perfect situation to follow his teammate around for as long as he needed to. And now he basically lost his teammate, so he might have been able to make it to the end if he fuel saves for the rest of the race, but he lost his right-hand man who continues to lead the race in Christopher Roberts.
Yeah, it just doesn't seem like the right call, so it makes me wonder if there's something wrong, because I don't think he would have made that call if everything was going swimmingly.
Yeah.
Back to the battle for now what is going to be third place, Dan Nyman and Alex Barroso in the Audi. It looks like he's gotten by Jeremy Swenson. The sun in the eyes at the exit at turn number 6, and we talked a little bit about the differences in these cars, but I think a lot of the differences we were mentioning were in relation to raw pace. But which of these cars is maybe the easiest on the tires that'll maybe outlast the rest on a longer green flag run?
Well, I think most people have found the Ferrari to be pretty good on tires. The Audi is pretty good on tires. As far as ease to control, I think the BMW is going to be the easiest to be consistent in, and that comes back to the thought I didn't get to finish, which was you can really trim these cars out. You make them really, really slippery, but they become really hard to hang on to, specifically right there in that bus stop. If you trim the wing out to absolutely no downforce, sure, you're really fast on the banking, but the car becomes kind of a nightmare in the high-speed corners. And here at the bus stop at Daytona, it's really important to get through there.
That is David Marcus on the outside in the green number 50. Murphy Nichols on the inside. They're going to touch and crash together in the bus stop. And Murphy Nichols going to slam the tire barrier, not what he wanted to have happen.
Both drivers racing each other a little bit too hard for my taste in this long of a race. Looks like Marcus had the run around the outside, tries to close the nose. Murphy really didn't want to give that position up, and the car behind saw it happening before it happened. It looks like Murphy's going to call it. I think David Marcus might have stayed out, though.
I believe Marcus did get back rolling. Back up at the front, DJ Alessandrini is closed up to Christopher Roberts, and this is one of those things that's why I wonder about Austin Cobb's move, is that DJ is going to draft up to Christopher and gains that time, and I don't think Cobb's going to have a spot to slide back in. That's assuming that they all end up back together in that pack the way that they went into the pits, which we know is probably not going to be the scenario.
Yeah, and that's one of the things about tonight's race is it's really a race of minimizing the time that you spend on the pit lane, because you are definitely going to have to take one pit stop. But if you're in DJ's position now, formerly Austin's position, you can save a ton of fuel by doing what we were watching them do. You kind of roll off the throttle early, coast into the corners. The only guy that really can't do that right now is Christopher Roberts, because he's stuck out front. So you can almost guarantee Christopher Roberts' pit stop is going to be longer than anybody behind him, which means he's kind of the guy that's out on the doorstep cold. Before, it was Austin Cobb that was in a great position. Now it's DJ Alessandrini, unless Austin Cobb knows something we don't, which obviously we're just up here talking. But it's definitely looking like Alessandrini's got the up hand on this one.
Anthony Montello and Justin Hall battling for 22nd position about midway through the field. Pretty crazy to me that that midway through the field is 22nd. Here's a car around. That's Andrew Smith in the number 19. Let's go back and see if we can find out what caused him. He was having all sorts of issues before he got to the corner. So I think there was probably something related to that meant he ended up spinning around. So trouble for him. As let's move back for, how about Stephen Couliari in this number 37, a name I don't think we saw up at the front in the FCP Euro Tour. But hold that thought, because James French and Tom Abramaitis are going side by side, and Tom started this race back in 15th. French started this race in 9th. He's actually gone backwards.
Yeah, Abramaitis is looking like I think he was much further up the road on this battle, if memory serves, and now he's fallen back a couple of positions.
See some damage on the nose of that BMW in trail. So perhaps that could have been from the incident we saw earlier with James Houghton. I believe that's where that damage came from. And in behind, Alex Bueller in the very brightly colored McLaren MP412C in tow.
You have the howl of the V8 turbo on that car, and this is really not the section for this car. It's not particularly happy when you have to turn the wheel much, but once you get out onto the banking, he's probably in a really happy spot to sit there and draft. And I have to correct myself, I'm pretty sure these guys are running in the same position that they were, but once they cleared that little incident, now they've pulled back up to Stephen Couliari and James French, battling there for just outside the top 10.
Up in 6th place, Paul Darling is closing in on Dan Nyman. That Lamborghini chasing that Ferrari down. A lot of speed difference there, but he's going to pop out of line and slow down. Maybe realize he wasn't. Oh, he's actually lifting very early. Fuel saving, perhaps.
That's absolutely the fuel saving we're talking about. Again, tonight's race is all about minimizing the amount of time on the pit lane until you've done that pit stop. Then, by all means, once you know you can make it to the end, sure, go for it. But at this point, it really benefits you to not race the cars around you. Sure, it's going to make this thing a little bit of a waiting game until we start to roll into that pit stop. But every driver has a different strategy going on right now, and we're going to be able to see those strategies as they unfold. Speaking of strategies, it's looking like we've got a race going on between Nyman and Swenson. Nyman wants it.
It's Nicholas Johnston in the Lamborghini on the outside. Yeah, he's going to go a little bit wide there. The pavement actually changes, a little off camber on the outside. But if you do that right, you can actually find some speed there. That was really tight, as it looks like Swenson pulled back in front of Johnston. Almost a touch there. It's going to bring Nyman and Darling into the mix.
Now finally Johnston on the brakes deep into the corner, and then the McLaren wakes up once you get the turbos spooled and is able to tuck in between himself and that's Nyman in the black and white Ferrari behind. Correction from earlier, but now we have a new fourth place runner in Nick Johnston.
And into the West Horseshoe, Swenson closes up to the back of Johnston, and now it's a 4-car fight all the way back to Darling in 7th place. How about Stephen Couliari and James French? They're going back at it. Tom Ebermitis as well. And Alexander Bueller at the tail of this group.
Little bobble for Couliari. You saw him, kind of looks like he had a slide on the way into the corner, didn't catch it until past the apex, which is really easy to do in these mid-engine cars. And then the tires have a little bit of a flash heat on them. They're a little slippery for the next couple of corners. Does a good job to get it recovered, and now gets that's a really good run onto the banking through NASCAR 1 and 2, with James French dropping back a couple of car lengths. So we have these little trains of cars forming, and I think that's really because the guy at the front is kind of stuck there. The guys behind don't really want to pass. They're all happy to save fuel.
A bit of a bobble. Here comes French with a dive up the inside into the bus stop. Not quite going to be able to get alongside and take advantage of that position. But took a look there for a moment. Want to keep your eyes on the sun as well. It is beginning to set here at the World Center of Racing, Tom. The temperatures are likely going to cool down as well. The grip level is going to come up. You might see drivers get a tad more aggressive as the night goes on as well. Here's Justin Hall and Ito Waxman. These guys have had a battle here before. Waxman is missing some parts and pieces off that Lamborghini. That is most certainly a Craigslist Lambo that you picture from the back half and don't show the front as he comes through 3 and 4.
Unfortunately for Ito, that's a really bad damage to have here at Daytona, but he's got a good drafting buddy just in front with Justin Hall with a perfectly good front end on his Lamborghini. So Ito's going to try to benefit from the lack of body damage on that car, and really this is a more important race for Ito to stay tucked in behind somebody rather than it is to race other people.
Dustin Barty and Kevin Lee almost got together in turn number 2, and here's Chris Uglietto. Whoa, that's Ian Giebler sideways at the exit of the infield. This has been a tricky spot for Giebler today. He's been a little bit wobbly in this infield section, and Pendergast in that Mercedes AMG GT3, he's going at a car ahead of him, but side by side of the West Horseshoe, a 3-car battle now. On the outside, that is Dustin Barty in the number 13 Lamborghini. See if he can clear Giebler in here, and it looks like he will. Kevin Lee now in behind Giebler.
He's deep on the brakes, and we're getting to the point of the race where the tire degradation is going to start to become a factor as well. Not only is the fuel burning off of these cars, they're getting a little bit lighter. Again, they started with 75% fuel, so they've used probably half of the tank at this point. The car is going to be lighter on its toes, but it's also going to have less grit from the tires. And even though the track temps are going to go down a little bit and the air is going to get cooler, the cars are probably, if anything, going to get harder to drive.
Dan Nyman on the back of Swenson, just unable to completely close the gap on this number 1 car.
Pay attention to the last little bit of this front straightaway. That Ferrari has the highest top speed. The McLaren has the lowest top speed, but the McLaren can pretty much run that top speed whether it's drafting or not. It doesn't really care, and that's due to its gearing. So I think Dan Nyman, if he's holding back at all, he might be able to motor past Swenson pretty easily. And the other driver I'm still trying to keep an eye on is Austin Cobb, he was our early pitter, and I haven't really seen much from him. So kind of scan up and down that list.
Yeah, Austin Cobb right now is running in 34th position, and I can't say that I quite think that this is a strategy he meant to play. I think that this is a scenario that we end up with because of maybe forgetting to put race fuel in the car. 10 minutes in tells me that he just ran it out and then just came to pit lane. Yeah. So we'll see if Austin Cobb can recover. Stephen Couliari has had an issue as well. I'd like to go back and find out what happened to him because we were watching his battle a little earlier in the night, and I think we might have missed an issue. Gets loose right in front of James French. Oh, man.
Spears it right onto the pit entry wall, and that's what I was talking about. As these mid-engine cars, the balance starts to change, and they get really difficult on the brakes. And if you haven't planned ahead for as the tires kind of wear off, and you really get down to that low aero kind of slippery balance, it's tough to hold on to it.
On board with DJ Alessandrini in the BMW M4 GT3. 20 minutes into this race, when is the fuel window actually open? I would say it's probably getting there as DJ gets to the back. He's just saving fuel. I don't think there's any intention he'll go on by and take the lead away.
No, and it really depends on the strategy for the race. Look at how much fuel he's just backing off so much. He's not only saving fuel, but at this point he's really saving tires by not having to push that hard. And I agree. With the pit window coming up, it doesn't change. It's probably a 15-minute window right in the middle of this race, but if you're DJ, you want to push that as long as possible because this race is going absolutely your way. If you're Chris Roberts, you really want to get it out of the way early, maybe try to shake DJ a little bit, and then just put the pedal down.
And people at home might be wondering, why do they want to save fuel? Do they love the Dolphins? Well, we all love the Dolphins, Tom, but the reason why you want to save fuel is because you can spend less time on pit lane filling your tank if you save it now. And, of course, in GridLife Touring Cup, we don't really have to worry about that because the races are 15 minutes. 4 times that, you might have to start worrying about it. Barroso and Nicholas Johnson fighting for third place right now. Dan Nyman and Swenson have fallen a bit back behind, but it's interesting to me to watch these two cars together, considering underneath, as we mentioned earlier, the skin is the only thing that's really different about these cars, so interesting to watch them race against each other.
Yeah, it looks like Barroso and Johnson have really kind of separated themselves from the pack before. Dan Nyman has his mirror full of Swenson. Nate Olson is another BMW driver. We haven't mentioned him much tonight in the 117 car, but he's doing a great job clinging onto that battle for 5th, 6th, and back. And Paul Darling's also still there with Alex Albert ever so slightly outside in the Lamborghini.
Before it gets too interesting here on the pits, we're going to hear from FCP Euro. Again, big thanks to FCP Euro for helping us out this season. Every part you buy is guaranteed for life. We'll be right back. Back live here on GridLife Live. Christopher Roberts continues to lead here on our 1 hour of Daytona in the Audi R8 LMS GT3. DJ Alessandrini rides in second, just saving fuel right now before the pit stop sequence. 36 minutes to go in our 1 hour event here, Tom. We saw one of the front runners, Austin Cobb, pit early, we think, because he might have left qualifying fuel in the car, which means that he had to come pit before the window was open, so he will likely have to pit again, perhaps, so which is not going to be great for him. But we've also seen some pretty good, clean battles throughout the field up the road. Kevin Lee and Chris Uglietta are going at it side by side in a couple Lamborghinis.
Now it's a drag race, tucks for the over-under, and I was also going to call out, things are looking racy back for third between Alex Barroso and Nicholas Johnson, who maybe have swapped spots, not quite, but Barroso has a lot of pressure from Johnston, who was actually our top qualifier back in the tournament qualifiers to determine the top 60 tonight. So that car is really, really fast. And at this point, if you're not Roberts and Alessandrini up at the front, you're really jockeying to start to pull your way back that way. And that's why I think Nicholas Johnson is looking a little more racy. Goes to the high side over Barroso. And this is not as compliant a battle, not so much co-opetition as there is at the front.
Johnson across the line will clear Barroso and take the lead away. Now, whenever we race here in GridLife iRacers, we're racing cars like the Miatas, even the GT4s at some tracks. You look at them as where you want to be on the last lap because you're going to be able to draft on by pretty much anywhere we go. That same situation is true here at Daytona as well because these GT3 cars, while fast, still are very effective in the draft here, and they also are fairly draggy at high speed, which means that you might not want to be leading this race when you come off the bus stop, which which is really interesting because I feel like the guys at the front, Christopher Roberts, DJ Alessandrini, Austin Cobb, those guys know that backing up drivers behind you in the bus stop might be the way to win this race if it's very close.
Yeah, there's a lot of variables and a lot of kind of learning that you have to do when you're around different cars. So if you're Nicholas Johnson and go ahead.
Alex LaRose turned around in turn number 1. That's kind of how Seal with them. How Seal in that 23 car all the way back in 23rd position, 22nd make that. Let's go back and see if we can catch what led to that incident potentially. But off into turn 1, just 16 car just looped it around.
Oh, and that's actually the second incident for LaRose, and it looks like the high-speed balance of that car, or the corner entry balance of that car, I should say, has just really gone away from him. Unfortunately, Seal kind of committed to the outside and had not quite enough room, but this has been a pass. We have Jeremy Swenson made the move over Dan Nyman. Nate Olson still clinging in with the BMW. Paul Darling. This is a four-way battle for 5th, and Swenson was behind Nyman last time we saw, and now is around.
Yeah, so Swenson got by Nyman on the back straightaway heading into the bus stop, so it completes that pass. But I'm not sure that Nyman's going to sit back here for too long. He's also got Nate Olson closing in from behind. Olson was a driver that started this race in 10th. He's gained 3 spots. And here's Paul Darling, quiet tonight, 11th to 8th, but now looking for 7th on the outside of Olson off into turn number 1.
Deep on the brakes down there into NASCAR 1. And going back to the thought about kind of information seeking and figuring out what you're going to do. You have 4 different cars in this battle right now. These drivers all have to figure out, okay, if one car or another is in the lead, do I back somebody up? Do I go for the draft? Do I need to be leading on to the final lap? Do I want to be coming into the final lap on second? And it all depends on who you're racing against and what car they're in. Not only is it just this race, you know, when it's all Miatas, you only have one variable to kind of figure out. But now we've got 6 different variables and different drivers all at the wheel. There's a lot more going on in this race as Nyman will look at the balance of that Ferrari. A little bit of a slide on the way into the second horseshoe.
Yeah, a little bit of some understeer in that car. It's sort of a double apex corner. You kind of approach it sort of shallow and kind of hit the apex twice before you exit there. So there's a couple different ways you can take that. Ken House-Seal dealing with Brian DeVries right now in the number 11. Austin Cobb on his charge back forward after his early pit stop in the background. You see a spin. It's Ito Waxman in turn number 1. No surprise here. Turn 1, I think, is one of the most challenging corners on this racetrack. I think there are others that are more technically challenging. I think this one is just, you're coming in with at such high speed, it makes it so easy to make a mistake.
It's also blind as you're coming off of the banking down onto that apron. As you said it earlier, it's a little bit off camber, but as soon as that pit wall starts, you just lose the exit of the corner and you can't really see where you're going. So it's a big muscle memory corner. Behind Anthony Montello's got a whole heck ton of cars, as you would like to say, stuck behind him in that McLaren. He clears him a bit, shoots flames at him to say, nah.
It's like something out of Star Wars as we go through the International Horseshoe up onto the back straightaway again. Great racing going on here. That's Jackie Ding in the 86. We actually haven't really seen him yet today. There he is in the BMW M4, and cue the Supra jokes here as we head off into the other horseshoe on this racetrack. But Jackie has had a quiet night, started the race in 59th, second to last. He's had a little bit of argy-bargy, but now runs 36 on his climb forward.
Yeah, that's a great effort. He didn't qualify actually for the race, so he started dead last with no time. He did qualify into the race, so he had some seat time. He didn't come in cold, but whether it was technical issues or a choice to start at the back, he's making good with it.
So Sun continues to set here. We're just about halfway through this race, going to be getting into the dark soon. Here's Dan Nyman, Nate Olson going at it. Nyman's fallen off the tailpipes of Swenson ahead of him. And Nate Olson and Paul Darling now beginning to put pressure on him for that position.
I think Olson and Darling are both starting to get a little bit more racy. You see Nyman is starting to fall into the clutches as Swenson starting to pull away. Swenson in the white McLaren, a couple of car lengths ahead, but we're looking back from Nyman into the front end. The interesting front end of Nate Olson's BMW and then Darling behind.
Duncan James off in turn number 1. The 75 car started in 44th. Good climb for him. Behind that is Jeff Underwood and James Houghton on a rebound after the collision he had at the exit of this corner here. Ooh, McLaren's a little deep. Flame shooting, and also I've noticed a lot that the McLaren specifically has very hot front brake rotors in the braking zones. I'm wondering why that car, as opposed to the other ones, seems to have so much brake temperature in those front brakes.
It certainly may come down to the balance the car requires to stay.
Woo!
Whoa, big dive from the 74. Eric Dalla Riva shoves it in there and
pulls
it through. It pulled it off, absolutely. It's really looking like, as you were mentioning, it looks like the McLaren is having a hard time getting stopped, and I wonder if you have to use a lot of front brake bias to get the car to be balanced, and that's going to hurt you in the long run because as they get hotter and hotter, the car's not going to want to stop.
Up at the front, no changes there. Roberts and Alessandrini still pacing this field. Seen some battles throughout it, though. Tom Abramitis in the number 52, Alexander Bueller in the 47. They're running 10th and 11th. James French has been up here most of the day. Let's jump back a little bit deeper. Here's Alex LaRose in the number 16. We saw him looped around earlier. He is on the tailpipes of Jeff Underwood. We were just looking at. I want to see if the Lamborghini's got any brake temperature. Doesn't look like it, just a shine as, whoa, there goes Underwood. He's going to go for a spin in the bus stop and take a car with him. That, I believe, didn't get a number on that car. Is that the 16 of LaRose?
I don't think it's LaRose. It's one of those throwback liveries. That car might have already been sitting there. As it's none of these cars in our frame. We're going to see the McLaren go around, and that car should already be out there.
Yes, there it is. Stopped, and the pace car has also found its way into the wall. It's that guy. It's like the guy that drove it at Belle Isle. We got that same guy here in iRacing today. Check back in with Tom Abramitis and Alex Bueller. This battle, these two have been running around each other all night long. They're going to be getting real sick of looking at each other, especially in the mirror of the BMW. I'm sure this pink and black car is hard to miss.
Well, if you missed it, we're halfway through the race, 28.5 minutes to go at this point. So we're absolutely within the fuel window, and most drivers seem to be pushing this as long as they can do, which makes a lot of sense. You know, the longer you run this, in the air that you have the drivers around you. If you're Alex Bueller, you're kind of accepting that you got some nice draft off of these cars, and you don't really want to do anything about that. You kind of just keep saving fuel and saving fuel. So I'm not surprised to see that we haven't had many pit stops yet, but we are still kind of in that waiting game for the pit stops to cycle through, and then I think we're going to see this thing shift over to more of that sprint race that we're used to seeing.
A little bit of blocking going on there. Abramitis in the 52, hunting left and right to stay in front of Bueller's number 47. Bueller going to stay in behind for now. Also of note, which is kind of an interesting feature, is that these Lamborghinis, and specifically, let's find one of those Lamborghinis, have a look at Nicholas Johnston. These actually have a configurable lighting kit on the nose of these things, and most of the drivers here will have selected the endurance lighting kit, which gives you the extra light bar on the nose. Curious to see if anybody doesn't have that. James French does not. You can see it's lacking the light bar, which is an interesting configuration thing that you can do here in iRacing. You can also light your stuff up with LED strips, which I don't, looks like Johnson does have some above the door or not. I don't see him lit up just yet.
I was actually talking to James French just before the race, and he just bought this car to race it just before this race, so he doesn't have a lot of information on this car. Probably didn't even know you could change the lighting around, in fact.
And it does work. It does actually increase your light output. However, Daytona being lit already won't really make a big difference. Carry on. Is that all you had to say?
That was it.
I wasn't sure if I interrupted you or not. Dan Nyman through the bus stop. Nate Olson and Paul Darling continue to run nose to tail here.
I was going to point something out. If you take a note of just in front of them, there's a lot of empty track, and then Jeremy Swenson in his stark white McLaren has started to pull himself a bit closer to the back of Nicholas Johnston and Alex Barroso. So he's completely cleared himself of this now battle. Nate Olson around the outside of Dan Nyman stretches the legs of the BMW down through the tri-oval. Do we go three wide? Paul Darling's trying to go with him, and actually Nyman looks like he lifted and just let him go.
Yeah, playing the long game, perhaps saving some fuel, going to lift out of the throttle. Alex Bueller, whoo, this is getting racy on the front stretch. Right in behind, I think he's saving fuel as well, and it's pretty easy to do. The BMW is a much taller car than the McLaren MP412C, so it's easy to stay in the draft here. And the brakes for turn one. Nicely done by everybody so far.
Yeah, a bit of perspective on the banking here. We actually did a 14-hour endurance race with all the champions from Time Attack in GRIDLIFE competition back in 2019 with my K24 swapped Honda Fit. That video is on Gears and Gasoline's YouTube channel. It's really fun, but in the draft, in my Honda Fit, even drafting off of much smaller cars, I could cut the throttle back to maybe an eighth throttle just to stay with drivers. So you can absolutely just kind of almost coast around the banking when you're in the draft behind somebody, and it definitely looks like Alex Bueller's doing that in his McLaren behind Tom Abramitis.
Whoa, big wiggle there for the 37th place car. I believe that is one of the yellow and blue Lamborghinis. Field has gotten pretty well spread out at this point in the race, so it becomes sort of a strategy discussion here. Nate Olson now in front of Paul Darling, who has slid between Nyman and Olson in that 117 BMW. With 25 minutes to go, your fuel window is closing in the next 5 to 10 minutes, so if you haven't made a pit stop yet, it's about time to start doing it.
Yeah, and again, the whole point of this race up to this point has been to minimize the amount of time that you spend sitting still in that pit lane. So as we see those drivers start to stream down pit lane, things are going to get very busy in there, but also we're going to see who's been fuel saving better than others. And I can pretty much guarantee you if it's a driver that's been at the front of one of these draft battles, they're going to sit longer than the driver behind.
Pops and a lot of cool sounds out of some of these GT3 cars. Always like Chris Uglietta in the 39 cars looped it. This is at the exit of the bus stop. Bad place to be parked. Woo, here goes a car sliding through. That looks to be Rob Clark. We haven't talked about him yet today, running the Ferrari 488 platform. Here's Austin Cobb with his pit stop completed, running 21st now. He's been out on the racetrack for 13 laps, pitted on lap number 7. I don't know. We're going to have to see where this slots out. Maybe he knows something that we did, but I still think that there's something not quite right with the way he pit.
By my calculations, this should be a 34, maybe 33 lap race, depending on how long the pit stops go, and most cars should be able to do about 22 laps on their tanks of fuel. We're working lap number 21 right now, so it's looking like a majority of the field is really pushing this thing to the very last minute, and we're also going to see maybe some of these cars are a little more thirsty than others. I know the BMW should only be able to go about 22 laps on its tank of fuel, but with Austin Cobb being about 7 laps behind everybody, he's right on the cusp of if he's saved enough fuel, he might be able to run flat out, and Austin's the kind of driver that he would have done that research and known that coming in. I still think it's an odd choice to have pit away from his teammates so early, but maybe they're not as much of teammates as we think. Maybe the cars match and the drivers are as competitive with each other as everybody else.
Yeah, that could be. Jumping up the road here to find Christopher Roberts and DJ Alessandrini. These two have been nose to tail for the entirety of this event. DJ, though, is no slouch when it comes to pace or strategy. So I think DJ has Christopher Roberts where he wants him. I think there's not really any incentive for DJ to go forward or to move back. I think he just runs this race out, and this battle is only going to get interesting in the last 30 seconds of this event.
Yeah, well, not so much. I think it's really going to show itself on the pit lane. When both of these drivers come through the pits, I would put my money on Alessandrini having saved at least a gallon, if not more, than Roberts has done. So obviously there's a slight difference in fuel size or fuel capacity with the two cars, but really I think Alessandrini is going to get moving a lot quicker and make the pass pretty easily in the pit lane. And if he's done it right, he will have made a pass and broken the draft in the pit lane.
Right, so that's really where that benefits him, is if he gets out in front of Christopher Roberts, and Christopher Roberts is right there, I think that's a disadvantage. Correct. Because he could draft right back by you. I think if you get 3, 4, 5 seconds out ahead, you're good to go, and really you don't have anything else to worry about for the rest of the night. So that could be what he's planning to do. Here's Abramitis Bueller and French continuing to battle for the 10th position. Let's go back. Austin Cobb has just gotten by Rob Clark. Chris Uglietta in the 39 car in the backdrop. Eric Dalla Riva in the 74 car has James Houghton on a resurgence after his crash exiting the International Horseshoe in the first couple minutes. And Houghton's done a pretty good job so far here, Tom. He's up to 23rd.
And these guys are both buddies from Canada, know each other well, and race frequently with each other, by my understanding, so they might be working together to get back through this field, as both have been through their misfortunes at some point or another. We saw Houghton, one of the first incidents of the entire race, kind of got collected by another spinning car, or in another incident, I should say, but now he's tucked up behind the back of Eric Dalla Riva. And Dalla Riva looks like he's actually been through the pit lane. He's been out for 16 laps. The rest of the field's been out for 23. So Dalla Riva, I don't think he's actually gotten his pit stop done. That might have been to repair the car or something. But he has been through the pit lane once, as has Austin Cobb. For the most part, the field is not pitted yet.
Beautiful sunset here in Daytona Beach, Florida, at least the virtual version. Less pandemic in the virtual world as well, which makes things even better. Here's Nicholas Johnson, Alex Barroso. These two have also been sort of working together just a little bit throughout this night. We are down to the final third of this race, the last 21 minutes. Jeremy Swenson hits pit lane. I think he overran his pit stall just a touch. Nate Olson is also on down, and looks like a few other takers here as well. So they're making their pit stops as Swenson is free and clear. That was a 10-second stop for fuel, and he should be done for the day.
It's interesting. I looked at the pit stop time for Austin Cobb, and it was not much different. So Austin might actually be playing a really, really good strategy here. But Swenson just broke the seal on that pit lane, and now it's going to be a flood. I think in the next 2 laps, we're going to see all of these GT3 machines come through that pit lane. One thing we haven't talked about, it's really hard to get a car slowed from 178 miles an hour to 50 at Daytona, and these guys are going to basically be dumping off of the banking here and into the pit lane. If you haven't practiced it, it catches you out how slow you have to go.
Yeah, well, the beautiful thing about GT3 cars is they have anti-lock brakes. It is really fun to come here and watch NASCAR cars here at Daytona. Without ABS, they run little brake kits. They lock up brakes and go sailing down there at 120 because they just completely miss the braking zone. But here, the ABS will help you. But because of that, you want to maximize your braking force. Your cars dive into pit lane.
Those are the leaders, both leaders to the pit lane. Chris Roberts, Allison Drini. We'll see how long they spend sitting still on this pit lane. So drivers who have already done it, that would be Nate Olson and Jeremy Swenson, along with Tom Abramitis, Alex Bueller. All of those cars were in the top 15 when they came through, but look how many cars are there now.
Oh, look at DJ. He's playing the gear shift game, trying to maximize the speed on the pit limiter. If you bounce between the gears, you actually get a little bit more speed out of it. A little bit of pro gamer strategy for sure. But Christopher Roberts on pit lane. We'll see where he comes out in relation to Alessandrini, who you see in behind.
And it's pretty much the entire top 10 is now in the pit lane. Johnston, Nyman, Barroso, Darling, Albert, all there. French
there he goes.
Is the first one not to go. And now Alessandrini with a drag launch out of pit lane. Ooh, that's going to be close. I don't think that's enough to break the draft, though.
Go, go, go. He can get out of here clear. This is a bit of an S, a juke to the right and back to the left. It's going to be about a 1.1 second gap as they leave the box. If he has a really good outlap, he could break this. But Roberts knows how crucial it is to stay close. I'm not sure that he'll be able to get away.
Yeah, don't forget that Roberts was the pole sitter for this race and has been consistently the fastest car on raw speed for this entire race. So I think Alessandrini, it was a valiant effort, but it's going to be tough. And when you're looking at the gaps for the draft, it's really 1.1 to 1.2 seconds where the draft starts to influence these cars, and that is exactly where Roberts is.
So Johnson and Barroso and Swenson have already made their pit stops as well. Pretty much everybody has made their stops at this point with 18 minutes to go. So now the question mark is we climb onto the banking here, Tom. Did DJ Alessandrini do enough? Is he going to be able to get away from Christopher Roberts in that number 38 car? Climb up onto the banking. The gap is 1.1. How far back is that draft effective?
Like I just said, it's about 1.1, 1.2. It's right where he is. So for our entertainments, I hope Alessandrini didn't get away, but you can guarantee he sure hopes he did not. He's trying to break that draft and now is hoping for a really good bomb through that bus stop. The BMW with its stability is super strong through the bus stop, but the Audi, if you know how to drive it right, can keep up and then some. Looks like James Houghton has had some more incidents.
Yeah, unfortunately, Houghton has found another off-course situation here. Just slipped on entry. Car got away from him. That's going to hurt right into the tire barrier.
Yeah, easy to do with these mid-engine GT3 cars once you trim them out. We've seen it happen before tonight. Now he calls it a night officially. But it looks like Christopher Roberts does have a draft. It's now under a second, so we're going to see that shrink down little by little over the next couple of laps. The other thing we learned just now is that Austin Cobb, if he was trying for the strategy, it didn't work because he's already done a pit stop as well. If it did work, he would have been right with these guys, but he is 20 seconds back. So unfortunately, if it was a mistake or not, it's really not paid off for him.
Yeah, James French has found a lonely piece of racetrack as well. Ken House-Seal has as well. He's got Dustin Barty behind him. But I think everyone at this point is done with their pit stops or done with the mucking about and the strategy and the fuel calculator. It's just all about racing to the end here. And you're going to have little groups of cars, and you're going to find a buddy. And if there's cars ahead of you, you're going to be real mad if they don't want to work together because everyone's just trying to get the best finishing position they can. And sometimes, as you mentioned earlier, the word that I love to use from Darrell Waltrip, co-opetition. He's your buddy until he's not.
And that's out the window at this point. Ironically, we're used to 10-minute heat races and 20-minute features. We're under 20 minutes, and we're back down to that feature race length, and we're on to a sprint to the finish. So we have the two-car battle with DJ Alessandrini and the BMW against the Audi R8 of Christopher Roberts at the front. Nicholas Johnston and Alex Barroso did not switch spots on their pit stop, but Jeremy Swenson certainly clawed back quite a bit of time on them as he's joined that battle for third, and the podium's not decided by any means on any step.
Here's a battle for 27th. That's Brian DeVries in the number 11 and the 74 of Eric Dalla Riva as they head off into turn one. On the brakes, the Lamborghini a little bit more compliant on the ABS and will arc into turn one very nicely.
See that mid-engine power just gets out of that turn one so much better than the rear-wheel drive front engine BMW. But that BMW is definitely good on the brakes. Closes back up, and then we'll see it kind of ebb and flow a little bit more.
15 minutes left here in this race. The sun almost below the horizon here at Daytona International Speedway. fireworks waiting to go off at the conclusion of this race and crown somebody the winner of the first race of the season. Now remember, there is not just bragging rights on the line. We've got GRIDLIFE merchandise credits, $50 to the winner of the championship of each car. So they're all being scored together. However, if you're in a car that is more unique than just picking the fast one every week, then you're going to get yourself some merch credits. So that's a really cool thing that we've got going on here at GRIDLIFE. So DJ Alessandrini going to be probably sticking with the M4 for the entire season. Christopher Roberts will be in the Audi all season. So next week, the advantageous car might be totally different.
Well, that's actually interesting you say that, because a number of these top-running drivers actually tried different cars at all 3 tracks to kind of see what they wanted to deal with for the season. You know, learn the consequences of your actions. And Alessandrini is one of them. I haven't talked directly to Chris Roberts. I'll definitely do that. But Alessandrini was basically saying, I'll live through Daytona, and then I'm going to have a good car at Road America and VIR, because the BMW is definitely a little bit better handling, a little bit more consistent of a car at a proper road course, which this is not. So I think the fact that he's even in the lead of this race right now might be a little surprising to him, and the competition person in him is going to come out, the competitor, I should say. But I don't think he expected to be quite as strong this race as he has been. I'm
really interested looking at Robert Pendergast's car. He is one of the lead Mercedes. Actually, I think he is the leading Mercedes of this field, back in 14th place. Really interesting to watch the brakes. We mentioned the McLaren earlier. This car is completely lighting up the fronts and the rear brakes. This is not what I would consider the lightest on its feet of the bunch. It's also got a lot of its weight forward, so when it shifts weight, all that dumps all the energy on the front axle of this car. And watch these brakes as he goes into the bus stop here. Front brakes and a little bit of the rears too, lighten up red. I love night racing. Yeah,
by the end of the infield, those things are going to be glowing all 4 corners, because you don't have that big banking to cool them down. But he's actually had some drama this race, and it's good to see him running all the way up in the top 15 still. I think that car was off track at least once or twice, but it looks pretty clean. I don't see a lot of damage, and he's kept the thing pointed the right way for the most part for a 14th place run right now.
13 minutes to go here. DJ Alessandrini's lead, that was a full second, has now dwindled down to, at the line, it was 0.188 seconds, and there they are coming to turn number 6.
And just behind them, the battle for third is really heating up. Look at Nicholas Johnston in the Lamborghini holding off Alex Barroso, but Jeremy Swenson in the McLaren has joined this battle. So we have 3 different cars, 3 different drivers battling for the final position on the podium at round 1 here in the GT3 battle for GRIDLIFE iRacers. And I got to say, Swenson has rallied this one big time. He was back in the 5th place battle when he was the leader in 5th place. He's left them all behind with the pit stop and some serious speed, and now is battling for a podium.
As we head into the bus stop on the brakes, the McLaren, as we mentioned, really likes to go in a straight line, but that's
really trail braking.
Oh,
wow,
that's
brake
so
lights
interesting.
Flashing through the middle and even towards the exit of the bus stop to keep the nose planted. But again, the McLaren just kind of hits its top speed no matter what, and you can guarantee going to use the draft to pull back up to this battle. It's looking like Barroso's also got a great toe on Nicholas Johnston this time, now hunting around.
Oh, Swenson hitting pit lane. Did he not fuel the car enough here, Tom?
That's a big bummer if it's true. He did pit 1 lap earlier than everybody else, but tough to say why he might be doing this. There may be a penalty involved, but that would have been you get a chance to clear a penalty before you actually have it assigned to you here in iRacing, and it's surprising to see that white McLaren on pit lane.
Yeah, we'll see if he's going to take service. Looks like he is. That is super frustrating. Was about to crack inside the top 3 if he could get by Barroso and Johnston. But looks like he will not be able to do that. Johnson will get some clear racetrack. Now Barroso will be able to close up in that 53 Audi as we hit the final 11.5 minutes.
Lamborghini looks really strong on the infield as he started to pull away. Remember, the Audi was hunting behind in the draft on the banking, but now has dropped to 3-5 car lengths back. Now they come back up on the banking, and Barroso is probably just in his learning phase, figuring out, do I want to be leading onto that last lap or do I not? When can I pull this off, and when can I use my slingshot to pick up that podium?
Lights glowing on the nose of that Lamborghini. It's easy to see that it's coming. As we head through the bus stop chicane on the back straightaway here at Daytona International Speedway. 10 minutes to go in the first round of the GRIDLIFE iRacers GT3 Battle. Dan Nyman in the 57 has Nate Olson hot on his heels, and this battle had fizzled out for a little while, but they're back where they were at the first half of the race.
Yeah, and right behind them is Austin Cobb, actually, so this is probably close to becoming a 3-car battle for 6th, but Nyman, you can see him with the little lights above his A-pillar, has those endurance lights on, but the BMW starting to stretch its legs. BMW, completely forgot to mention, is kind of odd gearing. You really only use 3rd, 4th, and 5th, which most other cars you use 2nd through 6th here at Daytona, sometimes even 1st, but that BMW is geared super tall, and that makes it really good. The draft, look at how much he closes up, brakes early, not wanting it too badly yet.
Now the Ferrari is an interesting car. The official iRacing series that uses the Ferrari GT3 was at the Nürburgring last week in Nordschleife as Austin Cobb hits pit lane for his second pit stop, so that sort of confirms our suspicions about the fuel. But going back to the Ferrari, this car is beloved for a lot of reasons right now. One thing it doesn't do very well is trail brake. This car spins like a top. If you get any braking application in the middle of the corner, it really doesn't like it. You can set it up to not do that, but the default setups, and I know Nyman's probably not using that, but some of the default setups are really deadly if you try to start applying some brakes. This car at Sebring specifically through turn 1, oh boy, hang on to it.
Ooh, Olsen really loose off of the second horseshoe, and at this point the tires are begging for mercy with 10 minutes to go in this race, and the BMW being a front-engine rear-wheel drive car, it's got no weight over that back end in the slow corners. You see Olsen really slip coming off of turn 5 towards turn 6, and he's lost some ground from it.
Let's go back to Justin Hall, the 164. Here's Chris Uglietta in the number 39. He's going to go by on the inside. They touch, and around goes the 39 car off into the weeds.
Whoa, and I think Justin Hall, well, that was Justin Hall that just got a little bit of contact, but Dustin Barty was the one that benefited from it. He snuck through between the pit wall and the cars crashing and has picked up another spot up from 24th to 19th.
Continues to climb forward, looking back even deeper. Here's David Marcus and Drew Cleaver. And this is a really different car than his the vehicle that he shows up to Grid Life with. Also more colorful than the car that he would show up to Grid Life with.
Louder in all ways, we might say. He typically time attacks a Tesla Model 3 that's incredibly fast, and he's following a national championship autocrosser in David Marcus, who won his championship this year in a Toyota Supra, believe it or not, and one of the first drivers to move to that car. So a couple of different disciplines of drivers coming together here in sim racing to battle each other down there in the bottom half of the top 20. Ooh, look at the Lamborghini. Both cars really moving around a lot coming off of turn 5. I think that spot is getting real slick.
You know, one thing about the Mercedes that I didn't learn until I was at World Challenge a couple times this year and talked to some of the drivers about this car. This Mercedes, you would think that it'd be super torquey and super good getting up to speed. It's more of a handling car in real life, actually, and it's interesting because this is one of the cars that has actually had to be detuned a little bit because it makes too much power in the road variant. It's actually running a smaller motor than the road car does. So it's created a weird vehicle that is not really what it sounds and looks like. It's a little bit more bark than bite.
Yeah, that's kind of across the board, really. A lot of these supercars start with more power than they're allowed to use in GT3 racing, so that's more consistent than you'd think across the board, that a lot of these cars are making power in different ways than you'd expect to their real world or to their street version. But back at the front, look at Alessandrini, super good through the bus stop, and we mentioned it really early, but we want to emphasize it again. The BMW is really stable, and the strong point for that car is the bus stop, and Alessandrini might actually be feeling pretty confident that if he can get a good run through the bus stop on that final lap, he might be able to lead to start-finish, and indeed, if this was the last lap, he would have just won this thing.
So he just learned a lot right there, and so did Christopher Roberts. I think he'll make sure that he doesn't end up in that position. Roberts on the brakes into turn 1. Going back to the road car scenario that you talked about, these cars will typically make anywhere between 450 to 525 horsepower, depending on the model. So some of the cars like this Audi R8 would make more than that or very close to it in their road car form. So they've had to be detuned, and the electronics are all changed out. So they're not, some of these cars, while they look like their street counterpart, really aren't resemblant of them in very many capacities when it comes down to the mechanical side.
Ooh, check that out. That was some seriously tense stuff with lap traffic as Alessandrini flashing his lights through the kink, and the lapped car almost lost it as he was trying to get out of the way. Now tucks in behind this lead battle. But we kind of have these little pairs of cars forming up. Alessandrini Roberts at the front, and Johnston and Barroso for third and fourth. And then that Nyman-Olsen battle for 6th is not going anywhere either. So all of these positions still up for grabs. The only one that's really kind of lonely right now is Paul Darling, who's completely by himself in 5th.
Yeah, Daytona is a very big place when you're out there by yourself, and probably make yourself a cup of tea and read a book out there. We'll be doing that next week between turns 3 and 5 at Road America as well, so better get yourself a series. Maybe get through Harry Potter before the season's over. Out front, though, you mentioned Alessandrini and Roberts learning some things. Roberts closed up the gap this time. We'll see if he's just going to try to experiment and see how much of a run he can build here.
It'll be interesting to see if he takes it this time. Does he go high or no? He's pedaling it. He's backing off the throttle just a little bit. Doesn't sound like it much, but he would have easily been able to pull alongside that BMW if he wanted. He doesn't want it just yet. We have 5.5 minutes to go in this 60-minute race, and things are starting to get us leaning forward in our chairs just a bit as Alessandrini and Roberts continue to battle. Now this is for third.
Alex Barroso is in that orange tiger stripe Audi. Nicholas Johnson in the yellow and black number 36 Lamborghini. Similar scenario happening back here. The only difference is the leading car of the pair. It's a BMW out front. Johnson is in one of the Lamborghini Huracan GT3 Evos. Paul Darling, you mentioned, is kind of by himself. And Dan Nyman in a Ferrari, Nate Olson in a BMW. Roles reversed here, so we'll get to see how the Ferrari does out front. So, like I said, we're going to have cars start to group up and pair up. And now it's going to be a head-to-head battle between the car types.
Nyman, huge wiggle coming off of turn 1, grabbed some grass on the exit and had a huge moment. Olson almost collects him on the way into turn 2 at the International Horseshoe. And now look at the mid-engine power just gets away once again. So that was kind of a mistake for both drivers, really, in that little sequence.
Here's a couple of McLarens going at it. Whoa, Montello, big sideways moment. Oh, he loses it, slams into the tires. Oh. All the effort today going to go to waste for Montello. That car, that beautiful Lazy Rocket car, destroyed in the tire barrier. Just got unstable again. Turning and braking in this car is just a deadly combination. He'll get back rolling in 26th position.
55 minutes worth of tire wear. And eventually it's going to get away from you, I think, and unfortunately it came up 5 minutes short for him there into the bus stop.
There's Jackie Ding up to 31st. Now, 31st might not seem like he's running all that great, but have a look at where he started. We talked about this earlier. 59th. He passed 30 cars to get here, Tom. As far as I'm concerned, that's a win. That's a lot of cars that he's passed today. Good job on Jackie Ding.
It definitely it has to feel like a win. And honestly, in racing, passing cars is the most fun. So even if you start at 60th and you finish 30th, you probably feel like you won because you had the most fun over everybody else.
Side by side with Jeff Underwood into the bus stop. Nicely done. Whipped by the camera there. Final couple minutes here, 3 minutes and 29 seconds remaining. That means we'll have about 2 laps to go next time by, maybe 1, as we got a battle going on between Dan Nyman and Nate Olson off into turn number 1 here.
Olson was able to pull alongside the inside. Nyman actually kind of gives it to him. Look at him going really wide, hoping for the over-under. The BMW struggles for grip off of turn 1 through the little wiggles here, but Olson in the BMW is through on Dan Nyman in the Ferrari.
Maybe this is a strategy move here with 3 minutes to go. I think Nyman saw the writing on the wall and was aware that he probably wasn't going to win this battle if he was out front, so he's going to tuck in behind and hopefully utilize the draft. Austin Cobb's in a bit of a scrap right now with Robert Pendergast. And Jeremy, nope, that is Luca Tucciarone in the 48 car. Through turn 1, Pendergast hangs on, but Austin Cobb is not going to sit back here. How impressive would it be if Cobb could finish top 10 with 2 pit stops?
Yeah, if you've just joined us later in the race, Austin Cobb qualified second, pit very early, and we're not sure why. Took a second trip down the pit lane. Both McLarens that were really in contention for this race actually ended up pitting twice, and I'm hoping that that's not because miscalculations on fuel from the organizers, aka me part, but I would feel really bad for him in that case. But both of those McLarens that were in the hunt with Jeremy Swenson and Austin Cobb kind of botching their pit strategy. Interestingly, Jeremy Swenson is actually still in front of Austin Cobb up there in 11th. They're now side by side on track.
Smelling barbecue. Someone's cooking up a Mercedes behind us here through turn number 6. Cobb rolling up onto the banking. And it's a long ways up to Jeremy Swenson that you mentioned, but with a minute and 50 seconds to go off into turn 1, that signifies 2 laps to go this time through. Some lap traffic to deal with as well. I don't think it'll be a huge factor, but Roberts might see this as an opportunity to close up right to the rear bumper of Alessandrini. Now it's a chess match at 150. Where you put your car is so important on the penultimate lap.
Yeah, you hope it doesn't become a factor. Look at Montello going completely off track to make sure he doesn't influence this race, as we just saw him have that accident. That's very heads-up driving, and it's a tricky spot when you catch somebody on the infield here at Daytona. There's not a great place to pass. You know, it kind of creates a lot of side-by-side racing, but there's not a great place to just go by somebody because it feels very confined. So it's good to see the drivers that are getting laps start to be paying attention behind them if they may not have had cars coming through for, 58 minutes. They're still aware.
Pretty narrow racetrack, actually, the infield section here at Daytona. It gets wide at portions, and in other areas it's about a lane and a half wide. So they're going to climb up onto the banking in NASCAR turn number 2. Here's Tom Abramitis and Alex Bueller still going at it. This has been one of the battles of the day for me here, Tom. These two have probably either having fun or very frustrated with each other.
Perhaps, but we have 3 sets of those BMWs actually leading these little pairs. Alessandrini at the front, obviously, and then Nate Olson has taken that position away from Nyman, and now we're watching Abramitis over Alex Bueller. So those BMWs look like they're good on the long runs here at Daytona at least, and now that is Abramitis holding down the 9th spot in front of the very loud, I mean visually, McLaren.
Right, looking deeper through the rest of the field, trying to see if there's any other battles that catch my eye, but I think now it's time to shift the focus back forward to the front because there are 20 seconds remaining. The 1 hour at Daytona for the GRIDLIFE iRacers GT3 Battle is down to its final lap. 3.5 miles left here at Daytona, 13 corners, Tom, and here we go.
Well, we came 12 seconds short of getting the checkered that time through, but it's a white flag for DJ Alessandrini leading the way in his BMW M4 GT3. Puts the power down, looks beautiful coming off of turn 1, but I don't think this infield matters much. It's going to be all about the banking, especially once we get through the bus stop, not only for these 2, but for the 3rd place spot as well.
DJ drove it in really hard. We saw the car kind of aching for grip through the middle of the International Horseshoe. It managed to stick, though. Nyman and Olsen are trading spots in the background in turn number 1. Nyman tried to go around. He's going to tuck up underneath. This is for 5th place, almost a touch, as they come out of turn number 1.
Nearly side by side through there. That's tough to pull off. The battle for 3rd between Johnston and Barroso has been pretty quiet, but Barroso might be setting something up just like we are at the front. These 2 are going at it hard, but Alessandrini continues to lead through the infield. And again, what does Roberts have? What has he learned? Can he make this pass before the start-finish line? All I know is Alessandrini needs the bus stop of his life right now to win this race.
All right, pulling up onto the banking for the last time here in NASCAR turn number 2. Briefly check back in on Olsen and Dan Nyman because I think this is going to go all the way down to the stripe. Look at Olsen sliding the rear end of that M4 GT3. Nicely done. He'll keep it in line. Now back up to the front. Bus stop for the final time here, Tom. Here they go.
Deep on the brakes, just past the light. Alessandrini chucks it in tight. Look at how close Roberts is. Oh no, that was not enough of a run for Alessandrini, I don't think. But the question is, how much time did he actually need?
3/10, Tom. That's a lot of time, though. I'm not sure that Roberts can get there. He's going to start building it, though. They come through NASCAR 3 and 4. The final time, checkered flag is waving at the stripe. Here they come. Alessandrini has led the majority of this race. Roberts is there as well. Checkered flag waves. Here comes Roberts to the inside. Through the grass, side by side. Alessandrini gets it by a nose.
Wow. I don't think Alessandrini expected to have to go low, but he sure did. And somewhere along the way, Johnston got separated, comes across for a distant 3rd after being hounded by Barroso the entire time.
And Nate Olsen and Dan Nyman came to the stripe, separated by only, oh, here they come. They're side by side now. I thought they were already by it. Nyman across the stripe. He's going to grab that just by, let's see what the gap is at the stripe. How about a cool 29 thousandths of a second? Abramitis and Bueller, here they come. Bueller with a run in the McLaren to the stripe here. Almost, not quite, 10th place for the 47. Now Houseel and Carwile, this is the next close group. Houseel on the 488, the orange and blue car. Fireworks already shooting up for the winners of this race. Still, battles going on the racetrack.
We get to see just how long the legs of that BMW are. Maybe the 2-car draft is enough for Rob Clark to get into this thing, but here comes, Carwile. Here comes Carwile on Houseel. Houseel has a little bit of damage on the front of that Ferrari. How much time does he got? It's going to be another photo finish here.
Oh, not quite. I don't think Carwile's going to get there. Almost does it. Ian Giebler. Here's Lucas Webster in the 25 Lamborghini. Numerous battles to the stripe. Going the long way around here, Tom.
Tough to pull off, not quite enough of a run. You see that drag on the Lamborghini start to come into effect, and it's not enough.
That was all of our lead lap competitors. What a drive, what a race we saw. Alessandrini grabs the win by 89 thousandths of a second after an hour worth of racing.
And in the grass.
And imagine doing that 23 more times. Oh, man. Well, let's take a look here at our race results in just a moment. And have a look here at where everybody finished here, Tom. Alessandrini out front, 89 thousandths of a second, and Christopher Roberts in second. Well done, but it came down to the pit stop. That's where those positions swapped. Then Nicholas Johnson 3rd for Lamborghini. Alex Barroso in another Audi in 4th. Paul Darling in 5th. Dan Nyman, the leading prancing horse of the group, in 6th. And then Nate Olsen, Alex Albert, Tom Abramitis, Alex Bueller in 10th. And that number 47, the leading McLaren, which is interesting because we thought McLaren might have been the fastest of the group, but not quite today.
Yeah, I think it was just one of those roulette things where everybody in the McLaren had one of the bad days. But we have 2 more rounds to go, and the McLaren, it wasn't Daytona and done. The McLaren is fast everywhere, so I suspect to see some of those red swooshes up the leaderboard just a little bit, but I love seeing that variety. 3 BMWs in the top 10, a pair of everything else. And then we get back down to Jeremy Swenson, Austin Cobb. Both a little bit heartbreak on this one, having to go a couple too many times through the pit lane. Pendergast, the top Mercedes, comes through in 13th.
Then Luke Tucciarone in the number 48 Audi. Then James French in the Lamborghini holds off for 15th. Ken Seal, an interesting performance today. Did we see him get tangled up? I would have expected to see him run a little higher.
He definitely had some drama, but it was due to his starting position and just kind of being mired in that mid-pack. I know he's been putting a lot of effort into other series at this point in time, and came in a little bit cool tonight, and the 16th place kind of shows for it. But I think we might see Ken have a little bit of a fire under him, because he is a many-time race winner here in GRIDLIFE iRacers.
Looking down a little bit farther in the order here as we move on to page number 3, Ian Giebler in the McLaren. He had a couple loops but managed to finish off and finish 21st. We're still in the top third of the field here. Then how about Jackie Ding coming home in 31st? He passed 28 cars, 27, 28 cars en route to a 31st position. Chris Finnegan in 32nd. Jeff Underwood and a handful of our Lamborghini buddies. Ito Waxman limping a number 15 Lamborghini to the stripe in 35th. Then Joe Ferguson, Benson Ty, Chris Levitz, Alfred Rodriguez, Ryan Dunn. Not a lot of Mercedes towards the top. We sort of figured that would be the case this week, and a whole lot of Lambos that didn't finish this race.
The popular vehicle for sure. And again, we have prizes coming to the championship winners in each vehicle, not necessarily the overall winners, but still, again, happy to see the variety in all of those cars. Super close racing, and now we get to reset back towards something a little more familiar with some heat racing, some sprint racing, after a great debut for endurance racing here on GRIDLIFE iRacers.
Yeah, we've got Road America next week. We're not done quite yet, so don't go anywhere. We're actually going to talk to your race winner and a couple other people here in just a moment. And the first driver we're going to talk to is going to be Nick Johnson, who finished in 3rd in the number 36 car. And as soon as I can get a hold of him, we'll have a chat about the tail end of this race and how he managed to pull away and finish 3rd up the road from Alex Barroso. Nick Johnson finished 3rd today in the first round of the GRIDLIFE iRacers GT3 Battle. Nick, 3rd in the Lamborghini, the leading of the Lambos this afternoon. There were many of them. Able to pull away from Barroso, Darling, Nyman, and more in the tail end of this race. Take us through your night in your number 36 car coming home P3.
Well, we had a pretty decent qualifying effort, started 5th, and I was really just looking to stay with that lead group and save fuel for the stop to have a short stop. And I made a dumb mistake in the bus stop and got to slow down, and it relegated me back down to somewhere at the back of that second pack, and that kind of allowed 2 packs to form up, the 3 leaders and then that second group. So from that point on, I kind of knew that 3rd was the best I was going to get. 3rd or 4th, I think something happened to one of the top 3. So I worked my way back up there, and me and Alex worked together really well to kind of separate ourselves from that second group and just work together till the end. And I think he was trying to size me up, but I got lucky with a lap car and got some draft, and that was it.
We head off to Road America next week and then VIR. Your thoughts on those 2 racetracks, and do you think you can pilot this number 36 Lamborghini to a win or a second to improve on your 3rd in the next 2 rounds?
Well, after driving the car for one night, it's really stable and I really like driving it. So I think it'll be good at a place like VIR, and it's pretty slippery. So I'm looking forward to the next few rounds, especially Road America with the long straights, and we don't try to use his top end speed. So we'll work on that and see how it all ends up.
All right, Nicholas Johnson, 3rd tonight in the number 36 Lambo. Nick, we'll see you next week.
See you. Have a good night.
Move on now to DJ Alessandrini, who won this race, but it wasn't by a lot. 89 thousandths of a second was the distance at the stripe between you and Christopher Roberts. A chess match is how I would describe your race from up here, DJ. Jumping ahead of Chris in the pits and holding him off at the end. We knew that there was going to be a little bit of gamesmanship that had to be done at the bus stop. Tell us how you managed to save all that fuel, jump Chris in the pits, and then hold him off at the end.
I honestly expected to jump ahead of him a little bit more in the pits. And I took the exact right amount of fuel. I had 0.1 gallons left as I crossed the line. And the BMW is cool. It actually tells you the amount of weight of fuel you have left. I had a ½ pound of fuel left when I crossed the line. So I saved as much as I could, and I still only jumped him by about a second in the pit. So Chris was obviously running that ridiculous pace he was running that broke us away from everybody while also saving fuel. So it's a good thing it's Daytona where I can play the chess match. But I think next week, I don't think the chess match is going to be quite as effective. I'm going to have to bring some more pace to the table.
No, we head to Road America next week, which there is still Slipstream to be involved there, but it's a little bit more of a driver's racetrack in that you get to control your own destiny a little bit more. But we're back to the heat format next week. Do you think that helps you or hurts you when it's more of that sprint race style versus the endurance style we saw tonight?
I'm honestly, Kyle, I'm not 100% sure. I do think that the GT3 cars are probably better suited to the longer races. The super short, quick, wham bam, thank you ma'am races. As an admin of the series, I'm a little scared that it's gonna get pretty crazy in the not fun way. But we'll coach the drivers and plead with them to act like sane human beings, even though their racer/lizard brain will want them to do other things. But as far as my advantage there, I think it's racing is racing. I think toward the front, like the longer races, consistency is key. But at the front, like everybody's so super consistent. It's the consistency isn't going to be the one that separates it. It's going to be like those extra little 10th here, 10th there throughout the duration of the race.
All right, well, DJ Alessandrini got it done. Winner at Daytona. DJ, good luck to you next week at Road America. We'll talk to you there.
All right, thanks, Kyle. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Well, finishing off the interviews here, couldn't get a hold of Christopher Roberts, unfortunately, Tom, but I know you're busy doing point stuff in the background. But final thoughts on Daytona. That was a fun event, kind of getting to switch gears from some of the slower cars that we normally drive here that tend to pack up and race a little bit more in a pack. But tonight, we got to see some GT racing, and it was a whole lot of fun.
Yeah, and it really threw a different challenge at our drivers. I love looking down this list and seeing the different drivers and knowing where they've come from and seeing them all come together to do this, and which is in some of their wheelhouses, and in others it's really not in their wheelhouse, and they form to it really well. So I loved seeing the long form race, the strategy calls come alive. I think our cleanest, if not totally clean, first lap ever, and I'm a little worried for the pie that might hit me in the face in the future. We're going to look into that one, but overall, that was a completely awesome night. I enjoyed the heck out of it.
We'll be back next week at Road America, the National Park of Speed. Remember that if you're interested in GRIDLIFE Touring Cup action and you would like to get yourself some tickets for that event at the beginning of March, those are on sale now on grid.life. You can also find out how to join this series and find out more information on the GRIDLIFE Gaming Initiative at grid.life/gaming. Thanks so much for joining us here. My name is Kyle Heyer with Tom O'Gorman. Big thanks to FCP Euro for coming on board and helping us out this year. And we'll see you next week at Road America for round number 2 of GRIDLIFE iRacers GT3 Battle.